is based on other things than the production of sound by mechanical means. And this, again, we can bring in the metaphor of the machine not being applicable to speech. Many things can be happening in speech that are not just the result of a mechanical operation. So I'd like to ask Peter now to tell us how he sees the difference between speech and sound, and how this relates to space, and how this relates to music, especially the comparison of sacred speech to sacred music.
That's this idea of sound actually is a very simplistic, is that the right word, simplistic?
Simplistic, yeah.
Simplistic idea which relates to the idea of the machine, you know, like if we are machines and our vocal cords sort of vibrate and they bring some sound into the air. But that's a very kind of, very much reduced idea of what sound is, or because if you investigate in that, you know, especially in the Indian tradition, sound is the idea that sound is produced by two bodies moving against each other is just one aspect of sound, because there is, the Indians always talk about they differentiate between sound which is produced by objects and sound which is not produced by objects, which precedes sound. So there is an analogy to language, I think. You know, because there is sound is also a potential.
How would you describe sound? What is sound? In 10 words or less.
Yeah.
Friction.
Well, yeah, it's not just friction. Actually, the word sound doesn't really do justice to what is behind that. You know, the word sound actually is misleading because it evokes the idea of some vibration, you know, happen in the air and stuff like that. And it's better to, I think, rather than to define sound, it's better to say what it is not, or in how far it is really short of what's actually happening, because the idea that sound is something, is a vibration and is a friction and is something going up and down in a frequency, higher frequency and lower frequency, is a very one-dimensional way of describing something. It's like if you want to describe a tennis game, and you see that the ball is rising and going down and going up and going down, and that is certainly the case. So this you could also describe as a frequency, the high and low, and there's a curve, but it totally ignores that the tennis ball is moving. It has an energy and it has a spin, and when it comes down, suddenly it goes in a direction which you cannot foresee if you just watch the game in terms of, you know, let's say 2 dimensions, that you see it going up and down, because when it's thrown, you know, when it's bounced off, it receives an energy, and a careful player, a careful musician, or also a careful speaker, will know how to bounce it off, that it hits in a certain direction. And that means actually that there is another dimension to sound. And I mean, if you take the comprehensive term of sound, let's just use the word to see what's more. Huh? Yeah, of course. It's going into space, and by going into space means that in the Indian tradition, in the Sangeet Ratnakar, there's a very rich Indian musicological tradition of describing sound or describing the matter at hand, and that would be always connected to the two nostrils, because in the end it's the breath which is carrying it, and then the two nostrils give the orientation in space. So it's really connected to the nadis, to the channels going through the body, and that would be, if you read an Indian Shastra, an Indian description of sound or of that matter, it will always start with a description of the human body, or rather starting with the semen and the body grown out of that. And then it relates to when it becomes audible, because there's also inaudible sound, which is surprising, but it is. So then it becomes, it's carried by the breath as taking the human speech as the model for the most sophisticated, or not sophisticated, for the most complete or expression of sound. So the word sound doesn't really help us, because it implies inaudible sound, audible sound, and you also have to get rid of the idea that sound is just something which is moving around in curves or moving around up and down. And then, the Sangeet Ratnakar in the opening chapter says there are two qualities how sound can be made use of, which is it can be used for enjoyment and it can be used for liberation. So it carries, it has a dual character.